Hello, everyone. This is Jeffrey Kerr. I'm here today with a very special guest. He's a native of Raleigh, North Carolina, who has a new single out. It's a killer track, pun very much intended, from his upcoming album, Big Stage, which will be out via Daffin Records on May 16th. The single is called Dear Assassin. And not only that, but this guy will also be hitting the road to celebrate his new album with a few select dates coming up in his aforementioned home state of North Carolina, in Raleigh, Wilmington, and Charlotte. Please welcome Jon Lindsay.
Thank you for having me, Jeffrey. Great to be here, man.
Hey, no problem. So, to start things off, would you mind telling us about the album you have coming up?
Yeah, happy to do it. It's 10 tracks. It's my fourth full-length solo album. It was recorded in a bunch of different places, but probably mostly in California at a studio called Barefoot Studios, which is now closed. But Barefoot was a very special place. It was the studio owned and operated by Eric Valentine, the producer Eric Valentine, who's worked on a lot of cool records. It also there was a main studio and then a couple other smaller production and studio rooms there that other people that I really admire worked out of, like John Bryan, who you may know, masterful producer, Fiona Apple, a million other great people that he's worked with. John Bryan was involved with Barefoot for a while. So Barefoot is in Hollywood proper, or was in Hollywood proper, and private studio of Eric Valentine that was not open to projects other than what he was working on for many years. And then some years ago, he opened it up, I think in like 2015 or something like that. He opened it up for people to come people to come in and make records. And then just recently, he and his wife, who's the musician Grace Potter, who's awesome, they relocated, I think, to Vermont or somewhere, and they're selling that studio now. But it is a like classic Hollywood studio in the spirit of those dying breed of studios that have magical, vintage analog outboard gear and, crazy soundboards that famous records got made on and, all the old German microphones that you want. And there was a piano there called the Stevie Wonder piano. That's because Stevie Wonder recorded songs in the key of life on that piano, and that's the piano that's on this record. So mostly in that place over like the course of like 4 years. It was a record that took a long time to make. I also did some tracking in North Carolina in Charlotte at a place called Susu Studios. That's Sioux. It's a play on the Phil Collins song Susu Studio. And Susu is a place where I've actually made a lot of my records from start to finish, or from start through mostly to finish. This time I tracked some drums and some basic rhythm tracks at Susu in Charlotte, and then I took those bones out to Hollywood and did the whole rest of the record out there by far, and then mixed it out there and everything too. So it is largely an LA made record. It's got some cool special guests on it. It's got Matt Douglas, who is in the Mountain Goats that you probably know from your neck of the woods. Matt has played on a lot of my stuff. Historically, he's done a lot of appearances on collaborations with various, recordings of mine. He's amazing. He did all the horn arrangements and he performed all the horns that you hear on the record. My longtime collaborator, Chris Waldorf, who is the owner of Susu Studio in Charlotte, he played some of the drums on the record. And then another longtime collaborator of mine, a guy named Jonathan Erickson, who is in a band called The Noises 10 from Charlotte, also played some drums on the record. So yeah, these are a lot of those folks are people that I've collaborated with a bunch in the past, and they're back again, kind of in the supporting roles on this record. And then lastly, my really good buddy Mike Pepe, who's fantastic. He did all the engineering of all the LA stuff, got dialed in all the cool sounds, and he co-produced the record as well. So and mixed it. So he was very instrumental in this one, which just happens to be sitting right here on my desk. But yeah, big stage. So that's it. I guess that's like the logistics of it.
And with the single Dear Assassin, what can you tell us about it?
It's the third single on the record, right? The third one to come out. It's also it's it's the fourth track. It closes the A side of the record. The record, like the vinyl record, has four songs on the A side, six songs on the B side, just due to the length of the songs on the A side are a little bit longer. It's an upbeat rock song that definitely is it kind of tackles some darker themes, right? I guess I would just say like the speaker has a sense that he's involved in something that might be intense and alluring and stimulating and irresistible, but that is like probably not good for him, and that will ultimately probably cause a problem. So, that's kind of the basic conceit or whatever. But it's got a cool outro, kind of a cool build up outro move that it makes. Yeah, it's a cool rock song, I think.
And what inspired you to write it?
I mean that one just yeah, the feeling that you get when you're like, I have a pretty good idea that, I'm with someone now that I may be it like at the core, it's like love is not enough, right? Like that's the idea in the song. It's loosely based on, well, probably more than loosely based on a previous relationship of mine that was really intense and desperate, and love was not the missing piece. There was a lot of love, right? And intense, even maybe toxic love, right? Just a lot of love, a lot of desire, a lot of, yeah, like I said, desperate kind of intense feelings. But as we probably all know, right, like there's a lot more that you need to sustain a partnership or like a long-term, meaningful relationship. It can't just run on that kind of gas, right? Like there has to be some different some greater foundational things and some logistical things and communication channels and just baseline infrastructure has to exist in addition to all of that heat, right? And I think when you're in one of those things, like at least me and a lot of us, right? Like it's hard to put that thing down because the heat is so hot that we're only human, right? And when there's so much love and lust and attraction and chemicals happening, you can have a sense that this is not sustainable and this is probably not going to last. And this might really hurt me and I might really need years to unwind from what, the come down, right, on what this is going to do. But you might know all that and still not be able to step away, right? So that's the kind of, I'm afraid I know you now. I'm watching my life's waning days. That's the idea in the song, that you got that feeling, but you can't really easily put it down, even though you probably have the writing on the wall that you should, you know?
And as you'll be hitting the road soon to celebrate's big stage, how excited are you for it, especially making stops in North Carolina?
Well, so there's already been like a first leg of the tour that I'm just home from that was awesome. It was like a West Coast leg that started in Seattle and went all the way down, like Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, LA, Santa Barbara, just a bunch of really fun West Coast shows. And then we hopped over to Texas, played a club show, and then an official South by Southwest showcase. So I'm just kind of home from that, taking a little break here in Georgia, and yeah, gearing up for the record release and these other shows. The next of which are, yeah, the ones you mentioned in North Carolina. I'm super excited. I love North Carolina. I love being back to North Carolina. I mean, you mentioned that I lived in Raleigh. Your peeps listening to this will be like, oh yeah, he was here. So that was like 2015 to 17 that I lived in Raleigh. And then from there, I moved to New York City and lived in New York City for a long time, for like 7 years after Raleigh. And then before that, I was a Charlotte person for many years. Like basically grew up in Charlotte. So both of those towns, Charlotte and Raleigh, mean a lot to me in a lot of different ways. And then Wilmington is super near and dear to my heart too. I won't bore you with it, but I've spent a ton of time in Wilmington, Carolina Beach, Wrightsville Beach, a lot of some of my favorite venues, some that exist still and some that don't. Like the ones that don't would be like Soapbox, Laundry Lounge, legendary Wilmington venue that North Carolina people know about. Not there anymore. I used to love playing there. Great, great spot. There's still a place called the Ocean Grill and Tiki Bar at Carolina Beach. That's like a legendary spot that I try to play like once a year or so if I can. Just played there last summer with my buddy Benji Hughes. It was awesome. And Bougie Nights in Wilmington, been there for a while now. Also, one of my favorite clubs in North Carolina, friends with, Billy and Sean and all the guys that run that place. So love to be there and have a great kind of friend base in that town. So yeah, couldn't be more excited to go and do those shows in North Carolina and see friends. And in the Charlotte show, actually, one of my really good friends, like one of my best friends in the whole world, my buddy Slade Baird, who has a band called Amigo that you should check out. They're really fun. He's gonna sit in with me on pedal steel on some of these songs from the album. So we're working up like a special little micro set of some arrangements of some of these songs with him on steel. So that'll be fun. But yeah, can't wait. Can't wait for those shows.
Well, yeah, and I should add that my mom and I happen to own a beach house on Topsail Island, which is around the Wilmington area. We even just spent a couple nights there.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. As the Southern people said, topsoil.
Well,
Have
yeah, well, I grew up in Ohio, so I wouldn't have known.
No, no. It's a great listen, great neck of the woods. I love the Carolina coast a bunch. It's funny, this Friday, my wife and I are going sailing with a family friend who has like a big catamaran. We're sailing from Jacksonville to Ocracoke on this catamaran. So sailing out to the Outer Banks this weekend should be so much fun. Really looking forward to that. It looks like it might be some rain or some shitty weather, but we're going anyway, and should be a great time. So
Yeah.
love North Carolina, man. Can't get enough. And if you went like super deep on me background wise, you might see I also did a political project called the North Carolina Music Love Army, which a lot of Raleigh people know about. And that was something that I did from like 2013 to maybe 17, and it involved a lot of really great people like Caitlin Carey from Whiskey Town and the American Aquarium guys and like Chris Stamey and just a bunch of awesome kind of Americana, alt country, power pop, Raleigh royalty were involved in that. The Love Language, His Golden Messenger, people like that were involved in that project that Caitlin and I co-founded. So another thing about Raleigh that's part of my history is the North Carolina Music Love Army.
So going back to the beginning, how did you first get started in music?
Come from a musical family. My dad is a retired Episcopal church minister, and he's an organist. He plays the organ on a really high level. He went to Denison, so you're an Ohio guy, Denison University. My dad went to Denison, got an undergrad degree in music before he got into the Masters of Divinity thing and became a holy man. He was an organist first. I got pictures of me and my twin brother and my dad at the keyboard, when I'm like two or younger with him, having us there banging on the piano. And then from there, he taught us stuff. We took piano lessons. My brother kind of got away from it, but I stuck with it. And then, on into like middle school and high school, I started to play other instruments. I learned how to play the trumpet. I played the French horn. In high school, I was sort of a late bloomer with the stringed instruments. I didn't get into guitar until like end of high school, early college. I started playing bass actually on a really high level. I was a bass monster humbly in middle school, like around 13. I was just like all about bass, and still am. Love the bass so much. But that was like for a while, that was my main instrument. I even got away from keys and, which is where I started. I even got away from keys for a few years and just got totally obsessed with the bass and learned all the like Jaco Pastorius tunes and Donna Lee and Teen Town and all that stuff, and played bass in the West Charlotte Jazz Band, which was like a big deal growing up. That was like the thing you wanted to do. All my older friends that were cool that played music were in the West Charlotte Jazz Band. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, and then started messing around with songwriting and being in rock bands and stuff in high school and college, like most people that do this. And then just couldn't freaking shake it, man. Couldn't stop. Had to keep going and always wanted to make records and tour and find out about all that. Just kind of kept playing the game and kept making stuff and putting it out, and it just kept progressing.
Yeah, and it's also probably a good time to be a recording artist from North Carolina because at the time of this recording on last night's episode of American Idol, well, Charlotte native Josh King made it into the top 14. So, hey,
Well, I appreciate that. I definitely don't set my watch to anything going on those types of singing shows, but yeah, I mean, historically, North Carolina's, I know a lot about this kind of stuff because I've been in the business a long time. I think, Clay Aiken was a UNC Charlotte guy. What was her name? Like
Fantasia
Felicity.
Barrino.
Fantasia, yeah, I knew Fantasia. Fantasia used to work. Sometimes we'd bring her into a studio in Charlotte called Charles Holloman Productions. We used to bring her in to do background vocals on like commercials and stuff. I have a big background in like film, like commercials and jingles, and I've written a lot of things like that are still on the air in North Carolina markets. Like there's still car commercials and stuff like that I've written that are still, you can hear them a couple times a day now. So yeah, people like Fantasia, people like Clay Aiken,
Scotty McCreery.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of people that kind of did those singing competitions and all that. I guess what I would say to you about North Carolina and the national music scene, you got the singing shows and like the mainstream, super mainstream, big machine kind of industry thing over here. But then you've also got North Carolina being a foundational contributor to the national indie scene and the national songwriter scene, and this goes back to, I mentioned Caitlin Carey, Whiskey Town, Ryan Adams, right? I mean, who was mentioned on American Idol once? Like somebody sang "Stars Go Blue" on American Idol, and I think Blake Shelton or somebody was like, that's a great song. Who's that by? And the people are like, Ryan Adams, and this guy at the time, this is like before Ryan Adams got canceled. So, he was selling out, the Tabernacle and the Ryman. And Ryan Adams was somebody that I would call at the time was, 2014, 15, huge. I mean, he commercially huge for a grassroots indie musician, not on a major, not getting a huge push. But like those guys on that show didn't even know who he was, right? And he was extremely successful, critic darling and all that. No, but I would say your Merge Records, right? Your, back in the day, Mammoth Records and Chapel Hill, and gave us like Dylan Fence and all those bands, Yep Rock, you have Red Eye Distribution. You have a really important North Carolina music story going on that has nothing to do with like that mainstream TV cheese part of the industry, which no disrespect, like that's a legit thing, right? But if you look at like the sort of working musicians, kind of scene, which has definitely been more my scene, North Carolina is a big contributor to that part, that corner of the industry nationwide, right?
And for those who'd like to pursue a career in the music industry, where do you think would be a good place to start?
Look, it's changed so much in my life. It's changing so much all the time. I'm not the first person to say this. Like, there's really, I don't know what the paradigm, what the playbook is anymore, you know? I mean, it's definitely not like, look, I mean, a lot of what you see now, right, you see a lot of mediocre acts that are hyper funded because they're the children of rich people that can afford to supercharge the singer-songwriter band projects, of their kids and things, and, give them a fast track, give them a leg up in the industry. And that's a reality. I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's bad. Some of those people are like good. They don't all suck, But that's like a new development is that, money talks and like, independent money and being funded and kind of having capital is way more determinative of kind of whether people get launched or not than it ever has been, sometimes more than the deservedness or the merit of your project, your output, your abilities. But it's like all over the place. There's some rich kids that are awesome, right? There's some rich kids that are huge that really shouldn't be. It's just all screwed up. I mean, like, I don't know that I think that streaming has ruined everything. Like, 'cause so many people are so like it's black and white, and streaming is evil and the devil, and it's like, oh, pining for the days of the way it used to be. I think a lot of good things have come out of streaming, right? I mean, it's definitely there are aspects of it that allow you to kind of access some distribution that was previously gate kept by entities that had all the power. But there's also huge problems with streaming. It doesn't pay, and it's got a lot of issues. So the industry is in flux. There are all kinds of things going on. I guess what I would say is, like, don't worry about any of that and make something real and make something cool and try to build a community around it. So much of the building a community, though, that's problematic too, because it's all about your like content and your social media presence. And like so much of that is like the new paradigm now, right? It's not just I mean, image and fashion and all of that, and charisma. I've always been an important part of building success in rock and roll and in pop. And I'm not saying that stuff's not important, but I am saying it's totally taken over to a degree that overshadows the music now. So that's problematic too, right? I mean, you want to build a community around the stuff that you make, but it's also tough because so much of community building is about all the smoke and mirrors that are like, oh, what are all your numbers and your engagement and how good are you at being a, self-promoting huckster and all that. And a lot of people that are just genius musicians or artists are not, they're not micro media companies that know how to like, do comprehensive digital marketing campaigns and all that kind of stuff. So my best advice is like, it's to go old school, man. It's to go back to basics. It is not a business for the faint of heart. It is not a business that you should be in if you need instant rewards or instant gratification or instant success. You got to be somebody that is used to hearing no a lot, but you also got to be somebody that can keep going and find those yeses and make those yeses, right? So, I mean, I guess that'd be my advice is like really think about if you even want to get into this business because it's more screwed up than ever. But if you do, just nuts and but like meat and potatoes, like start with making cool, stuff that you're sure is at least enough to get you off. And if people can tell that you're making something that is honest and is getting you off, then that's the way to pull people in, right? And make them want to vibe with it is that they can see you're having fun and maybe you know something that they don't, right? I mean, if you're having fun with this awesome stuff that you made and they want to check that out, I mean, if you don't care, why is someone else going to care, right? So make things that you believe in and go to bat for them and put them out there and just be prepared to push a rock up a really big mountain for a lot of years. I'm not the best guy to give advice on this, probably.
Before we go, do you have any other upcoming projects that you'd like to share with us?
I mean, I think the focus for right now is just like this record, for this year, the story of this year is this record. To my previous rant, I believe in it a lot. I think it's well made. It sounds awesome, humbly. Worked really hard on it, but that doesn't always mean that something turns out cool. This record turned out really cool. I would say the focus for me is come see me play, come see me on this tour, come see me play shows that are announced right now. Come to the ones that we announce for later this year. Buy the album on vinyl from the Poorhouse, from Daffin Records, but it's made at so we manufactured the pressing of this album from Poorhouse Press, which is a Raleigh-based company. Adam and Lacey Lindstadt, shout out to you too. They run and operate that company, fantastic company. Get the vinyl. It looks great, sounds great. Will be something that you can listen to and find new stuff. Every time you spin it. A lot of layers, a lot of Easter eggs and things. And yeah, come see the show, come see me play. I'm doing a tour right now with my friend Benji Hughes, who's awesome. Check him out. He's incredible. This tour that we're doing right now, I open the show and play songs from Big Stage, and then I'm also in Benji's band. So the second set of the night is a Benji Hughes show, and I accompany him, and we play his catalog. And it's a far out show. It's really special. It's really good. So yeah, I would say that's kind of what's going on this year, Big Stage and the related touring. And I will say that I'm working on the next record beyond this one, but trying to stay focused and make cool videos and cool shows and one thing at a time this year. Really think we're doing this release right and trying to take care of it, pay special attention to every little detail. So like what Kenny Powers or no, Ron Swanson, I don't know. One of those guys says don't try to half-ass too many things, try to whole-ass one thing. We're whole-ass in this record release this year. So that's kind of the story. There'll be a lot more hopefully to share next year and beyond about the record beyond this and some other like side project stuff that I'm excited to talk about. But yeah, in 2025 it's big stage, man.
John, I thank you very much for devoting your time to this conversation. It was great getting to talk to you.
Great to meet you, Jeffrey. Thanks for having me.
In any case, for those who'd like to keep up with your career, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, all the places, right? It's just at Jon Lindsay Music. Jon is Jon and Lindsay is Lindsay Music. So Instagram, Jon Lindsay Music, Facebook, Jon Lindsay Music, SoundCloud, Twitter, Blue Sky, all the places. But Spotify, Apple, Spotify sounds crappy. The fidelity sucks. I'm not a big Spotify guy. I would say Apple Music is probably my preference or Bandcamp because it's lossless. It sounds a lot better on Apple and Bandcamp. But at all the places, check it out. Our tour dates are out there. And if you just Google Jon Lindsay musician or Jon Lindsay music, you'll get my sites and the website. We have an official site, and Daffin Records has a site. You can easily find the tour dates there. No digging. Don't have to do any weird digging. It's all pretty discoverable.
Well, thanks again for joining me today, John. This was great.
It was my pleasure, and take care, man. See you next time.